Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be looking at switch statements. Switch statements are statements that we use when we have multiple options. So they basically do what if statements do, but this is a shorthand. If we have multiple if statements, we can simply replace them by one switch statement. We're going to be seeing the syntax now. So we're going to create a file called switch.c, and we're going to put in our template, which is #include stdio.h, and we're going to write a program that's going to represent the level of pain we're feeling. So 1 is going to represent mild, 2 is going to represent moderate, and 3 is going to represent severe. So we're going to have a main function that's going to represent the level of pain, and it's going to return 0. Now we can write our main function, and inside our main function, first we need to declare the number variable, which is going to represent 1, 2, or 3. So we're going to have an int called num, and initially we're going to set it to 1. Now we can write our switch statement. So the syntax is switch, and in parentheses we're going to put in the variable that we're going to be switching, or we're going to be comparing. So in this case it's going to be num. Then we're going to put an curly brace, an open curly brace, and inside we're going to start using the switch statement. So to represent the different values we're going to be comparing num to, we're going to be using case. So it's going to be case 1, which means it's going to take the value of num and it's going to compare it to 1. So we said in case 1 we're going to print as mild followed by a new line, and after each case we have to put in a break statement. We're going to see later what happens if we don't put a break statement. And we're going to have another case, which is case 2. So this is going to compare the value of num to the number 2. In this case we're going to print moderate followed by a new line, and we shouldn't forget our break statement. Then we're going to have case 3, which we're going to print severe followed by a new line, and finally a break statement. Now we have all our 3 cases. We have an optional choice, which is the default choice. So that means if none of the cases match, that means if num is different from 1, it's different from 2, and if it's different from 3, we want to do something about it. So we're going to put that in the default case. So that is default, and if it doesn't match any of these, we're going to print out invalid value followed by a new line. And in the default case we do not need to include a break statement. Again, we'll see why that's the case later. So that's it for our switch statement. So we can save it. First we're going to return 0, and we can save our file and see if it works. So currently our num is 1, so it should print mild. We're going to save it and compile it, and we're going to run it with /a.out. As you can see, it printed mild. We can check again by changing num. So we're going to go back to our file, and we're going to change num to, let's say, 3, and save the file and compile it again. And when we run it, we're going to get severe. Now let's check if the default statement works correctly. So we're going to go back to the switch statement, and we're going to set num to something different from 1, 2, or 3. So we're going to set it to 4. So in this case it should print invalid value. We can save it, compile, and when we run it, as you can see, we get invalid value. Now let's see what happens if we don't put a break statement in between each case. So we're going to go back to the file, and let's say we remove the break statement in case 2 and case 3. and let's say our num is equals to 2. So in this case, the switch statements should print moderate. But let's see what happens because we do not have the break statements now. We're going to compile it. And when we run it, as you can see, it prints moderate, severe, invalid value. That means there's no break statement, so it's going through everything that's after what we chose. So it's printing everything after 2, including 3 and including the default value. So to stop this, we use break statements. So now we're going to do another small project using switch statements, which is going to be a calculator. So we're going to create our file with vi and we're going to name it calc.c. And we're going to include our template, which is standard.io.h. And our comment, our main function is going to be a calculator. So we can just say calculator, going to return 0. And we're going to write our main file, our main function, and inside our main function, we're going to build our calculator. First, we need 2 numbers. So in this case, we're also going to be dealing with division, so we need to use floats instead of ints. If we use ints, for example, if we used int and we had 5 divided by 6, which is going to be equals to 0.833, but if we used int, it's going to drop all the decimal points and it's only going to return 0 because it doesn't support floating numbers. So in this case, we have to use floats. So we're going to define 2 variables, 2 float variables. We're going to call them n1 and n2. We're going to give them an initial value of, let's say, 5, and float n2 is going to be 6. Now we need an operator. An operator is a single symbol, so we're going to be using the data type char to represent it. So we're going to have char op representing operator, and we're going to set it equal to, let's say, addition for now. Now we can write our switch statement. What we are going to be switching in this case is going to be op. So when it's plus, we're going to do addition. When it's multiplication, we're going to do multiplication, subtraction, and division. So we're going to write our switch statement, and inside parentheses, switch statement, and inside our parentheses, we're going to have op. So the first case is when op is going to be plus. In this case, we want to printf. First, we want to print in the first number plus the second number. In this case, we're actually dealing with floats, so we're going to be using %f. So %f plus %f equals %f. Now we're going to be using one syntax that we haven't seen before, but in the first video, we saw that when we use %f, it's going to be we're going to have a lot of zeros after the decimal point. So if we had 5, it would be 5.00000. So if we want to specify the decimal place we want, after the %sign, we can add .1. This means we want a floating number with 1 decimal place. So we're going to do this for all of them. And on the first floating point, we want to substitute n1. The second one, we want to substitute n2. In the third one, we want to substitute n1 plus n2. Then we have to break the first case. Then the second case we have is subtraction. So we're going to be doing the same. We're going to printf %.1f minus %.1f equals %.1f. And we want n1, n2, and n1 minus n2. And we're going to break. And in the third case, we're going to have multiplication. And we're going to printf %.1f times %.1f equals %.1f. Then we're going to have n1, n2, and n1 times n2. And we're going to break. And the fourth case is going to be when we have division. So it's going to be but when we are dealing with division, we need to remember that we can't divide by 0. So we're going to include an if statement, which is going to say if n2 is equals to 0. That means if the denominator is equal to 0, we want to printf can't divide by 0. Else, if it's not 0, that means we simply do the division. So it's going to be printf %.1f divided by %.1f equals %.1f, and we want n1, n2, and n1 over n2. So this is going to be dealing with our 0 division errors. Then finally, we're going to have a default case. That means if none of the operations match the ones we've said, we're going to have a default case, which is going to print invalid operator. In the third case, we forgot to include our break statement. Now we've almost finished our switch statement. We forgot to close the quotation here. And we're going to close the curly braces. So this is basically our calculator. We're going to run it and test if it works. Actually, we need to add new lines to make everything more readable at the end of each line. We're going to add the new line character. This is optional, but it makes your code more readable, so it's a good practice to include the new line character. We're going to have it at the end of every string we are going to be printing. So that's it. Now we're going to save our file and see if it works. So we have 5 for n1, 6 for n2, and we have the plus operator, so it should return 5 plus 6 equals 11. So let's compile it. It seems we forgot a curly brace, so we're going to go back to calc.c, and we forgot to close our main function. We're going to save this again and compile it. It compiled with no errors, so we're going to run it now. As you can see, we got 5 plus 6 equals 11. Let's do another test to make sure it works. Let's try if it checks for the 0 division error. So we're going to set n2 to 0. And we're going to have our operation be division. And we're going to save our file. We're going to compile it again. And we're going to run it. As you can see, it has detected the error and it says can't divide by 0. So that's it for switch statements. As always, you can find the video code in the description, and you'll also find exercises with their solutions. And thank you for watching this video, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more programming videos.